On this episode, assert leadership.
Let me make a point here, Rob.
Hey everybody, this is The Quarter Show. On asserting leadership, that's what we're going to be talking about. And what I mean by that is when you look at sales, and leadership, you don't necessarily think of yourself in sales all the time. Perhaps, maybe you do, maybe you don't. As leaders, as driving the sale or asserting leadership. But let me just take you through what I mean by that. Too often in sales, you get on the phone or you get into a meeting or whatever, and you don't immediately assume leadership. Instead, you allocate that leadership, or you redirect that leadership or the ownership of the sale over to the prospect. And so the phone call at the beginning goes something like this. Let's say it's yourself on the phone and the prospect's on the phone, maybe somebody else on the phone, and you're kind of like waiting. You're like waiting for something to happen and waiting for somebody to take the lead into the sale. And so it becomes this awkward thing for them and for you, where they're like, should I say something or should you say something? And there's an element of like, so here's what we'd like to cover on the call or whatever, and nobody really takes ownership. And one thing I'll say is you've got to assert leadership. So when you go into that phone call, you go into that in-person meeting, you need to be thinking, this is my meeting, this is my phone call, I'm leading this thing, and you grab it right from the get-go and you lead it all the way through. So when you jump into the phone call, you can say, okay, so here's the agenda, or here's what we're going to do, and just take that right from the get-go and you assert leadership. And by doing that, you could start framing the conversation and framing the sale right from the get-go, and immediately they grant you that leadership. They grant you that role. And by not doing it, you put yourself in a lower ground. You put yourself in a position where you're kind of selling from low ground, and you want to be selling from high ground. And it's not something to be egotistical or pompous or anything like that. It's just, if you take responsibility fully for the sale and you assert leadership from the very get-go, you then become a trusted terminal. You then become the authority on the cycle, and they look to you for advice. And right away, it sets a nice pace of trust and confidence at the very beginning of the sale. And if there's any trepidation or like it's messy and nobody really knows who the leader is or what's happening, there's an out control that happens on the sales cycle that's not good for your cycle in general. It's not good for them. It's not a good experience. And it just feels sort of awkward overall.
As an example of this, just earlier today, I was working with a new sales guy who's doing amazing. He's fantastic. And so he's had a prospect that he's been working with for a while, and he really would love to have her as a client, and it's great. And so weeks ago is when she needed to close, because she's opening a new kennel, and she's trains dogs and different things. She's expanding, and we need to fill that place up, right? She needs to fill that place up, but really we need to fill that place up with our materials and what we do and our help. So the thing is that he's talking to me about this prospect today, and he's like, here's what I've been doing. I'm like, okay, tell me what you said on the voicemail you just left. And he tells me, and it's kind of like, hey, we want to help, and we just want to support what you're doing, and I can't wait, and he's not like, I'm excited, but he's like, it's fine, it's very blasé, it's not very real, it's not about her, it's not about helping. And so I'm like, okay, look, here's what you need to do. And we just knocked out a rough sketch strategic plan. Here's what you put in email. You just bam, bam, bam. She does not necessarily know everything there is to know about marketing and about promotion, about communication, about filling up a space.
Yeah.
She knows how to train dogs. She's amazing at it. She's excellent, but that's not her thing. So when you come to the table, you have to lead. You have to be like, and I told him, I said, you need to act as if you're an employee of hers. And you need to be like, look, as an employee of yours, I needed this money a few weeks ago in order to do these, to get these communications made so I can start to get them out there so I can fill up space when it opens. We're a little bit behind the ball now, so I need to get going now so that I can get this thing going, right? You need to work as though, you need to come to the table and like guide a person through it instead of be like, we would so love to help you. It's more like, here's what I really need to get done. And so I need
Yeah.
I need you to give me the green light because we got to go. We got to go this direction.
Rather than sort of delegating the leadership over to the prospect, you don't want to have them like, hey, steer me on this cycle, because then it becomes a very sloppy cycle and it doesn't feel the way it should. So I was talking to one of our guys, Davey, on this on Friday, and in any cycle, right away, I remember, many cycles where I'm meeting in person or something like that, and right away, even though I'm at their location or something like that, I'm meeting in person, and there's an element of like asserting leadership from the very beginning, and that means steering the sales, steering the role, steering the conversation, framing the conversation. And a lot of people are afraid to sort of assert leadership. They're afraid that they're going to hurt people's feelings or step on toes or ruffle feathers or blow the deal or whatever. But it's okay to assert leadership. In fact, good leaders are pleasant to be around. And often in sales, I think salespeople probably don't look at themselves or think of themselves as a leader. Right?
I remember when I first figured out that I needed to do that. I remember exactly where I was and when it was. It was a few years ago. I just started as a salesperson. I definitely didn't feel like I could lead or really give advice.
Yeah.
But a prospect asked me what I thought they should do. And I was like, right? And so to a degree, it's also you don't understand that you are that.
Yeah.
So you have to find out that you are that to your prospects.
Yeah, you do. And the other thing is like, nobody is going to give you leadership. Nobody's going to say, we're going to assign you the leadership. Like, that's not what people do. What happens is that great leaders assert their leadership and execute on their leadership. And by doing that, people follow. That's what happens. It's actually, people think that other people are going to give them leadership. That's not what happens. You assert your leadership, and then people follow.
Do you do it by bullying people and pushing them down?
No,
Get out of your way?
no, of course you don't. But there is no.
What do you mean assert?
Early in my entrepreneurial career, I realized that even if you were technically a certain title, right? Even if you were technically a certain title, that actually is not good enough. Even though you're the CEO or you're the COO or you're this position or you're a VP of sales, title is actually not good enough. You actually have to assert leadership, and by assert I mean assume that role or take that rank. I did some training a few years back. I did some training where we were doing this. It was a physical training. It was like a boot camp. It was like a boot camp, and there was 37 people there. And the first day was a total train wreck, and it was this thing where we had to get into this raft, and we had to get all 37 people in this raft in a certain timed approach. And it was such a train wreck, I went to bed that night. I thought, that was awful. I'm a very organized person, and I run our company and things like that. And I was like, that was such a terrible experience. And I thought about that night. I thought, tomorrow morning I'm going to walk in and I'm going to give everybody the exact orders and the exact plan for what we're going to do and how we're going to do that drill. I know exactly what we need to do, and even though nobody's going to assign me a leader, I'm not going to wait for it. I'm going to tell everybody what the plan is. And so I woke up in the morning, and I gave everybody, said, you're going to go here, you group here, you go here, you go to this ladder, you go to this ladder, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go a single file, we're going to swim together. Each person takes 2 people, and 2 people at each ladder, so on and so forth. And we did this plan, and we actually got everybody, all 37 people, a lot of those people couldn't swim, we got everybody in an organized fashion into the raft the fastest time they had ever had for a group our size. So we set a record for a group our size just by having leadership and organizing that group. And I'm sure nobody was waking up thinking, hey, tomorrow morning we're going to assign Robert leadership role. We're going to follow Robert. It was like I had to assert that role, even though nobody granted that role to me. I didn't have any specific title. I was the same as everybody else there. And I think that really applies, and I think that that's what it means. So when you look at your sale, you just have to take on that role. You have to take on that role of leadership, and you have to steer and direct your sale and the conversation from the very get-go the way you want it to go, right?
And this takes skill. This takes skill. I mean, it's not like you're going to encounter no bumpy roads with this. It's not like because you're going to encounter some people who really assert. The prospect is really asserting back that they know best and they know this.
Sure.
You're going to encounter all sorts of things. So it's not like you're also a stone wall. You can't work with a person.
This is not
like
abrasive.
that. There's a lot more to the concept that he's getting.
Yeah, look, I mean,
here.
we're not trying to be abrasive. I'm not.
You got to think with this data. Right?
I'm pleasant on the call, but it comes from the very get-go. Like when you pick up the phone, it's steering it right away. If you're having a discovery call or you're having a phone call, it's steering it right away. It's like, hey, thanks for having the call. Here's what I want to go over. Here's how I'm going to present that. Is that good for you? And whatever it is, you're setting a framework for the call. And they say, oh yeah, thank God. Somebody took the reins.
Right.
They're actually thankful that you did it. It's not like abrasive, whatever. They're actually happy you did it. You're taking the reins and you're steering the sales cycle. And that's a good thing.
You have people try to push their way this and push their way that. And there's lots of different ways to handle it and to maintain your leadership because it's not just about being a leader. It's to lead to get to the goal that you're there to help get them to. It's the purpose at the end. That's why you have to do it. There's no prospect really that's going to get to that goal because they don't fully understand the way you do.
Or if there's no leadership, right? If nobody's running points, if nobody's running point on the sale or on any cycle or on any achievement in life anywhere,
right,
you're just not going to get there.
Because some prospects they think they know it already, and that's okay. So you got to work with it.
Even if they do know it, or even if they do know it already, the thing is that even if they did,
well,
the question is, who is taking the leadership role?
Yeah.
Even if they knew it all, quote unquote, who is taking the leadership role? Who is actually steering and navigating the sale and navigating it towards where it needs to go? And if it isn't you, who is it? Right? If you haven't taken on that role and assumed that role and said, here, I'm going to take complete ownership for this cycle and lead this cycle. If you haven't done that, then who is? Mm-hmm. Right? And who are you following? If you're not leading, who are you following?
Yeah.
Which means you're waiting. Which means you're waiting and you're following somebody else's lead. So it's more of a thought. It's more of a way. It's a mindset. It's a way that you think, and it's a viewpoint, and it's something that you assume yourself, and you tell yourself, and you realize, okay, I'm responsible. I'm leading this sale, and I'm going to take it where it needs to go. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, your outcome will be better. It'll be tighter. It'll be faster, and it'll actually be more pleasant for them as well. They actually want you to lead. And when you don't, and I can't tell you how many times, and this conversation started because I've had so many phone calls where I jump on the phone with another sales rep, and the sales rep will bring me in on the call, and it's their sale, and they're like, oh, hi John, it's so-and-so, and then silence. And then nothing happens or whatever, and it's awkward, and I can tell that they didn't take any leadership. They're not assuming leadership in the sale, and they're not steering it where it needs to go. And
yeah, but Robert, I wouldn't bring you on the call.
But this happened last week. It wasn't with you. And it's awkward. I can tell and I can hear it, and I listen very intently. I can hear it for the prospect. It's actually awkward for them and me. And so what I did on this particular cycle that I'm talking about is I just jumped right in. And took leadership. I took leadership and took it all the way through, and actually ended up to be a positive outcome. But they're expecting that too. Right? So if you're not doing it right from the get-go, if you're not assuming leadership or asserting leadership, who is?
Right.
Who is? And it's like, it's awkward for them. They don't want to do it, and they're looking to you as the expert. But all the same, I think people are worried about this sort of political correctness or manners or politeness or whatever, or some other thing, or they're waiting for the prospect to grant them that level of authority or something like that, and it becomes very bizarre. And so I would encourage you or challenge you to start asserting leadership on your sale. Assume the role of leader and take it through from now on. And don't worry about somebody giving you that role, because nobody's going to give it to you. You have to give it to yourself, and you have to take them all the way through and lead and navigate your sale to take it where it needs to go and make it a lot better, shorten the sales cycle, increase your probability of actually selling and closing them, and make them feel more comfortable knowing that they're in very capable hands, very competent hands. Okay? Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that little red rectangle that's down there. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Follow us on Twitter at The Quarter Show. If you want to search any other quarter things, hashtag The Quarter on YouTube or Twitter. You can see a bunch of shows there, and we definitely appreciate you watching. Okay, we'll have more coming at you soon.